Eerily haunting true stories about remote abandoned locations rich in history. Come with us in our travels from state to state, if you dare.
Be the last time anybody sees us alive. I don't know where she has us, but we're gonna get fucking killed.
Hello?
Gina, there is a beehive over there. Do you see that in the hole?
Buckle up, Buttercup.
Welcome to 50 States of Madness.
Well, hi. Welcome to 50 States of Madness.
Welcome to 50 States of Madness.
We're back from Texas.
We are.
I'm Shannon, by the way.
I'm Gina.
Yes. We always forget to introduce ourselves.
I know. We try, but we just get talking so quickly that I think it just all kind of flows, and then we're like, oh yeah, 5 minutes in.
Yeah. By the way, this is who's talking.
This is who we are.
Yeah. So we just got back from Texas last week.
Yeah.
It was exciting.
It was so exciting. We went to so many cool places.
We did. Got a lot of information for our podcast.
Yeah, a lot of new stories.
Yeah. But we had a little bit of car trouble on the way.
Yeah,
so that was exciting.
Okay. She thought it was exciting. I didn't.
It was a little nerve-wracking. Well, the thing is that, I knew I needed to get an oil change before we left. And I kept putting it off.
I'm going to let her bury herself right here. So go ahead.
I know.
I'm just going to sit back.
And putting it off. So we stopped in Arizona for the oil change. And I did get it on time. Lucky to say, the oil change was not the issue with my car. So we ended up...
Well, when it came out looking like mud, and the guy says, when is the last time you changed your oil? And then, then the best part, she says, before we went to Wyoming, I don't drive that much.
I don't drive... Well...
Oh, Lord.
Yeah,
we'll just stop here.
It was before we left to Wyoming. Right before, because I usually get oil changes right before we're on a trip. Because I really
For some reason, except this one.
Yeah, because I really don't drive that much, especially when I'm back. On the trip, we drove a lot. So right after I got back, the oil change came on, because I guess we drove a lot. And I thought, I don't drive that much in the city, so...
you still have to change it, even if it's not mileage, if it's time.
I just learned. Thank you. I just learned that. So I thought, I don't drive that much. There's my reasoning. Mechanic Shannon stepped in and said you didn't need it. So I stopped for that, yes, and he did tell me. He said, you have a little bit of an oil leak, but it's it doesn't drip, because I would notice it on my driveway. So he says, no, it's just a tiny bit, but I want you to know that there's something with your radiator. Because there's I can smell the coolant. And I was like, do you think we're in some part of, I don't even remember what part of Arizona we were in.
Phoenix?
Oh, okay. So we were in Phoenix, Arizona. So I thought, can we make it to Houston? Because if I'm going to take it into a shop, I'd rather be somewhere where we're staying for free. My daughter's house. So he said, yeah, I think just keep an eye on the coolant. As long as it's not going up, it might just be this little tiny leak. So needless to say, we did. We made it to Houston.
We made it to Kerrville.
Well, we made it to Houston, but Kerrville, we started having problems. Kerrville, because he said...
Which is 4.5 hours outside of Houston.
It is. And he said, as long as the heat doesn't go up. Well, in Kerrville, it started doing that when we idle. So every time we drove, we were okay. The engine stayed cool. But every time we idled, stopping to go get food, it would jump up a little bit, and and we would never we never try to test it to see how high it would go up. So we stopped it. So in Kerrville, we did stop at a mechanic there, and he said, it's normal. He did say that, right?
The noise that it was making was not normal. Maybe the temperature thing was normal, but that noise, that godforsaken noise it was making, it sounded like we were a jet and we were going to take off. It was so loud.
He heard it.
Yeah.
And he was like, and another guy comes over and says, my car does that all the time. That's just the radiator fan kicking in. It's just cooling down the car. These are mechanics. They said it's normal.
In Kerrville. Come on. I mean, no offense to people who live in Kerrville, but it's a very, very small little town. And so.
But they did inform us that they have a dealership, a Jeep dealership. You can drop it off there.
Yeah.
But I said, do you think I can make it to Houston? He goes, yeah. He goes, it's fine. It's working. You're fine. It's cooling. It's doing its job. It's cooling down the radiator. But when we got to Houston that evening, I just knew that, okay, the next morning we're going to take it into the shop because I don't want any problems driving back. And we were a little bit nervous. So we took it into the shop and I did have a coolant leak. 3 days later, we found out. One meltdown later because they weren't getting to my car after 2 days and I wanted to come home eventually. But and one meltdown later on the phone with the dealership, even my guy, he comes on. He's like, Shannon, I hear you're having a problem. So I just want to go home, Dalton. I just want to go home. Just when are you going to get to my car? So they did get to my car, and it was a little tiny coolant leak in the bottle, and a hose needed to be replaced. So, but we made it home.
We did.
And my car's working beautifully. But my daughter was kind enough to lend her car while we were there.
Yeah.
So it didn't stop us from visiting cemeteries and.
Yeah, we still basically did everything that we were gonna do.
Yeah.
Except we did not end up going to New Orleans.
We didn't.
But I don't know if we would have went even if we didn't have car trouble. I feel like there was so much to see in such a short time in Texas that I don't think we would have ended up going anyway.
I was surprised at how much there was to see.
Yeah.
And even though everything seemed like, oh, that's only, 25 minutes away, that's only 30 minutes away. Just us, when we go visit places, we like to look and find the things we're looking for. So
we hung up at.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, Houston traffic is like LA traffic times 10.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's the traffic, it's the crazy drivers.
The drivers, everything, yeah. I said the whole time, people that always want to talk trash on LA drivers here, they've never been to Houston. Because if you've been to Houston, you would never say that about Los Angeles because Houston is a whole... Man.
I've never been scared for my life on a highway as many times as I was in Houston. And I have to say, Gina is a very good driver. She's very careful, but these people, and my daughter too was driving and literally will run you off the road if you're not going 90 down the highway.
Yeah.
And I am talking...
in the slow lane.
Yes. And these highways... I don't know the last time they've been updated. Because you're literally...
Yeah, it's all over the place.
There are
potholes
so many
and, oh my God.
I don't know the last time they worked on the roads over there.
I almost felt like we were back in Wyoming off-roading again.
It was pretty bad. And people are zipping around you. And I know it's probably, a lot has to do with us knowing how to navigate through the Los Angeles freeways.
Yeah, it's just different. It's different driving on the highways in another state. For sure. Yes.
Yeah. Because over here we have like, oh, you're going to take the 5 freeway. Here's the sign over the lane you need to be in. Over there, it's like, oh, the 45's coming up and we're going to put the sign in the middle or on the left side of the highway, but you're going to have to exit off the right. Like, there's no rhyme or reason on the placement of the signs.
And you can't do that to somebody like me.
Yes.
Because I've said numerous times on this podcast, I can't find my way out of a box. And then you throw me into something like this. This is like a whirlwind. Like you flip my world upside down now and I can't get out.
She did really well though.
I didn't.
Yeah, you did. With the instructions, you did really well. But she did make me laugh. We went into a cemetery and literally the cemetery was a square. It was literally, there's one way in, one way out, and it's a square. It wasn't like one of those cemeteries where, the street, you're, 2 miles in to the back of it. You can see the exit at all times. And so we're getting ready to leave when we get into the car and I'm like, just head towards, she's like, where do I go? And I said, just head towards the exit and make a right. She's like, yeah, where's the exit? I'm like, she's like, do not laugh at me. Do not make fun of me. I have no sense of direction. It is literally just a 180 behind us. Like all she had to do was turn the car around and go straight. But she's like, yes, where's the exit? I'm like, where we came in. She's like, Shannon, stop doing that to me. So that was pretty funny. But it gave me an idea of how bad her sense of direction is.
I tried to explain it to people, and the closest thing, and I told Shannon, the closest thing that could, maybe make her understand is I think people are born with different talents. And I think some people are born with a sense of direction, and some people aren't. Some people can draw. Some people can sing. Some people can dance. It's just like when she goes on her karaoke tangents and
Amazingly,
she
I can do all four. Amazingly, I can do all four. Just putting that out there.
she sings and she thinks that she's doing so good and she thinks that she's like on beat, but she's 3 beats behind and she can't hear that. And I tell her all the time, like, don't you hear that you're like 3 seconds behind everything? She's like, no, I'm not.
I am on it.
It's like
I
the
don't know what she's
same
talking about
thing.
still.
I feel like it's just some people just,
And I refuse,
can't hear that.
And I refuse to rewatch my videos so stupid people can prove it to me, because I like to live in my world where I am on time with all my timing. Dancing, singing, everything. Check out my TikTok videos. You will see my dancing is superb. So, I am a professional.
Anyway.
So yeah, but we had a really good time, and we're really excited to bring to you some
we have
of
some,
our content and our photos.
Yeah, some really we visited we visited a lot of cemeteries, I feel like.
Yeah, we did hit more than we normally do.
Yeah, and we were able to find this episode might just be like, we're going to touch on a story, but this might be just some things that happened to us while we were in Texas. And so as some of you might know or might not know, when you go to a cemetery that you've never been to and you're looking for a certain grave, sometimes you can find it. Sometimes they have maps and they have things labeled and listed and whatever, and sometimes they don't. So we were looking for a particular grave, and I just said to Shannon, I'm like, well, I'm just going to go in the office and ask.
And me thinking that everybody has heard of this victim. Like, I just assume that they're from Texas and they know, high-profile victims that, that there's stories about.
But
so.
I was like, well, what are they going to do? It's not like we're here to, like, mark up someone's grave or something. We're just here to pay respects. Like, we're not being disrespectful. And this was a very large, well-known cemetery, we'll say. Yeah. And so I said, I'm just going to go in and ask them. And I thought it was going to be a lot easier than it was. But so I was like, I'm just going to go in. Do you want to come in with me? And she looked at me like, oh, I don't know. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. I'm like, come on. I'm just going to go in there. I'm just going to, tell them the person's name. They'll punch it in a computer and they'll tell us where to go.
That's how you think how simple it's going to be.
Yeah. So
but we're in Texas. Nothing simple.
We go in and I tell the lady like, oh, can you just, point me to the direction, or at least give me like a number or something that I'm looking for. And she's like, oh, okay, let me give you a piece of paper. So she gives me a piece of paper. Write down your loved one's name and their date of death on the paper. So I'm like, okay. So I write it down. Shannon's like, at this point, she's probably ready to shit herself, because that's what usually happens when she gets nervous. So she's just looking at me like, I can't believe you're doing this to me. So
I just turned around and sat down while she was filling out the paper.
I fill the paper out and I hand it back to the lady. And this lady was super nice.
I don't know why I assume that somebody's going to come out and say, we're sorry, are you doing a story on this person? We can't allow you back there. I don't know why I'm thinking like everybody has true crime on their radar, but...
Yeah, I mean, we weren't there for anything other than just, to pay our respects and whatever. So we go and she takes the paper and she's like, okay, have a seat. John will be with you shortly.
Oh, no, take you to a room.
And he'll take you to a room.
No, she took us to the room. Come back here to this room and John will come. Like, we're going to buy a plot. Like, it's one of those sales rooms where they have all the different choices on the wall.
I'll have to put a video. And I took a video of her and a picture of her sitting there. She was so nervous. I'm like, what is your problem? And so he comes in and
I thought, again, they were going to inform us about rules and regulations and visiting true crime graves. I don't know.
He takes the paper, whatever. He's like, okay, I'll be right back. He leaves and he's gone for probably 5 or so minutes. And then he comes back and he's like, he's super nice. He's like, okay, I'm going to tell you. He drew us a map out, everything.
No true crime police there in the cemetery.
No, he was really nice. And then we walk out and the lady at the desk, she stops us. And she says,
knows her true crime.
She says, excuse me.
Super sweet.
And the look on her face was just like, she was like so sad. And she's like, are you guys family of this person? I don't want to say the person's name. Are you family of this person? And we were like, no, we were just coming to pay our respects. And she was like, oh my God. She's like, as soon as I saw the name, as soon as you wrote it down and I saw the name written on the piece of paper, I thought, oh my God, they're family of this person. And
Who was a victim of this crime.
yeah. So, but they were so nice. And we had to do that 2 times.
Yes.
We had to do that 2 times at 2 different cemeteries, and they were both so helpful.
And the reason why she remembered it is because she moved to Texas the year that
this crime happened.
Yeah. So she was very familiar with the name because she got nervous moving to Texas during that time because of
what was going on.
Killer and all that.
What was going on. So
but yeah, so that was interesting. That was fun.
Yeah.
But she was really nice to us.
I kept trying to tell her, look, it's gonna be okay. Just trust me, it's gonna be okay.
The second one, I sat in the car and then I fell asleep.
She fell asleep. So I'm sitting inside and I'm trying to talk to this lady and I'm trying to give her, the information, and there was only one lady there and she was selling somebody a plot. So she was like, I'll be right with you. I just have to finish up this business. I'm like, no worries. So she looks out and she sees the door to the Jeep open because you can see where the cars are parked at the parking lot. She's like, is that your Jeep? And I said, oh yeah. And she's like, the door's open, right? She's like, people steal cars around here. They'll just take all your stuff. And at this point, I turn around. I can't see her in the car. I'm thinking she's out. And she's like, no, I was thinking that you were out walking around thinking that you were going to find the plot before I could. So I'm like, oh, it's on. Like, now it's a competition. Now she thinks she's going to get this quicker than I can. Little did I know the whole time she's passed out asleep in the front seat with the door wide open.
There's no competition going on here.
Like,
I was getting my sleep on.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that was in Galveston.
Yeah, so, but everybody that we ran into was so helpful and so wonderful, minus the people on the road, the people that were trying to run us off the road and give us a thumbs down and, like, flipping us off.
We did. We had that on our drive through New Mexico from an Idaho plate. They gave us a thumbs down because of our California plate. And I always said, every time I've driven to Wyoming and passed through the states, never have we encountered anything. I've done it many times, and people are always really nice. But Idaho, what's going on?
Yeah. People.
Why don't you like California?
People were not too nice to us on this trip, but
maybe around the holidays, a lot of stress going on. It was right after the New Year, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Who knows?
But we do have a story for you today because we visited something that's been recently in the news.
Yeah.
Is the story about baby Holly. And if you're not familiar with it, it's about this little girl whose parents were murdered and they didn't know where she was, but now recently they do know where she is and she's been reunited, so I'm going to go ahead and start the story with that one about how we went to go visit where their bodies were found in Texas and stuff.
And I just want to say too, before you start, we have had some comments and some people asking how we find certain locations, because clearly by what I just told you about my sense of direction, it's not me finding these places. I can get you the information, I just can't get you there.
Yes.
I can tell you where it's at, but I can't take you there. So we were actually able to help a listener find a bridge in Wyoming that he had been looking for apparently quite a while and wanted to visit. And so Shannon was able to give him pretty good directions to where he commented and let us know that he found it. But a lot of these places, like this one in particular, it's not like an actual address that you are going to visit. You don't just type this into your GPS and go. It requires like a lot of time and a lot of searching, because a lot of these things, especially on this trip where we did pretty much all true crime, it's just open fields that you're looking for.
Yeah. They'll just give you like the name of a street. So this one in particular, they said, oh, it's off of Wallaceville.
Yeah.
And so what I had to do is I had to drop a pin on Wallaceville and do my Google Map search, and I took a picture of the crime scene, and I just kind of go down the street and match like the light poles, the telephone poles, put the picture in there on the Google Drive. On the Google Maps, and I just kind of drive until I can match it up and find the location. So that's kind of how I found this location and knew where to go.
Yeah, so if you're trying to find this location, this one is not an easy one to find.
I do give an actual, like, I kind of drop pinned, and so I do have an address for it.
It's not far off the road.
No, not at all. And it's a private property, so we weren't able to walk on the property, but we were able to drive up to it to see it. So kind of where they found them. But and I'm gonna kind of give you some, I don't know, it's really weird, a lot of the dates, I'm gonna let you know, but so I have the story of Tina and Dean Clouse. And so Tina's name was Tina Gail Lynn, and she was born on September 21st, 1963.
Oh, wow.
That's my daughter's birthday, who lives in
that.
Texas, who just moved to Texas. Her birthday is September 21st. Not 1963, but
Yeah.
September 21st. So that was one coincidence. And she was born to the parents of Leslie Roy Lynn and Shelby Jean Jones Rogers in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma.
Oh my God.
I was born in Oklahoma, Midwest City, Oklahoma, but it's right outside Oklahoma City. And then there's Harold Dean Clouse Jr. He was born on June 7, 1959. That's my grandfather's birthday, June 7th.
Wow.
I'm telling you, like, it was just when
Look
I
at
started
that.
writing down these dates, I know. He was born in Kentucky to parents Harold Dean Clouse Sr., who had passed away when Dean was only 6 or 7 years old, and his mother was Donna Ruth Allen. So, and then later became Donna Castellaneta. So, Tina and Dean met when they were both living with their families in I know I'm going to mess this up, New Smyrna, Florida Beach,
I think it's
Florida.
Smyrna.
Smyrna?
Smyrna.
Oh, like the drink.
No, that's Smirnoff.
Oh. Okay, maybe not like the drink. Okay. New
Had to
Smyrna
begin.
Beach, Florida, in 1978. Tina was only 15 years old when she met Dean, and he was only 19 years old. So they were really young.
Oh,
And they had,
I didn't realize they were so young.
so young. She was only 17 when she had Holly Marie.
Oh, wow.
So they got married. And the following year, they had what their family describes as a whirlwind romance.
Oh.
I'm going to try to get this right. Tina's brother was dating Dean's sister.
Oh,
already.
okay.
And they got married after that too.
So they were kind of family friends.
Yeah. So they knew each other already. And they were married on June 25th, 1979. My grandparents were married on June 25th.
Oh are you making this up?
I am not making this up. When I was writing down these dates, every time it hit a date, I'm like, after that, there's no more coincidence. But I just wanted to say, like, it was just so bizarre as the dates were coming through. I was like, wait a second. I know. It was
very cool.
I thought the coincidences were kind of funny.
Yeah.
But they all end kind of on there. Other dates are like kind of close or whatever, but nothing right on it like those. So on January 24th, 1980, Holly Marie was born. And that was their little girl. And they were the two, Dean and Tina, even though they were young, they were described as very devoted parents. They took care of Holly. They really loved being a family. That summer, Dean, he worked in carpentry, in construction. He made cabinets.
Oh.
In Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, that area, there was this huge boom in construction in the 1980s during that time. And so they thought, if they moved towards that area, they will, he'll be able to get a job, a really good job over there. So that summer of 1980, they moved there in his mother's Burgundy 1978. It's an AMC Concord.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to find.
Oh, you don't know what they look like?
I don't know what they look like.
They're ugly.
Are they ugly?
Oh, they're so ugly. Yeah, I remember. I know exactly what they look like.
But back then, that was a brand new car in 1978 Concord, and it was 1980 when they moved.
Oh,
so
yeah.
he borrowed his mother's car, and they moved to Louisville, Texas, outside of Dallas. During this time, he got a job working for a construction company. It was called D.R. Horton Home Builders. And Dean had a cousin that lived down there in that area, and so they were able to live with them to save up money. Tina stayed in contact with Dean's mother on a regular basis. I think even the mother had plans to go down there to visit them during the holiday season. So she would be regularly in contact with Dean's mother, Donna, and all of a sudden in 1980, October of 1980, all contact stopped.
And the daughter was born, you said, in January?
In January of 1980. So all contact stopped completely with the mother, and so she got a little bit worried. So a few months had passed, and someone contacts Dean's mother, Donna, and says, hey, your son and his wife, they joined a religious group. They're part of our group now. We don't believe in material things. We live a vegetarian lifestyle. And so we have, and he wants to cut off all contact with the family. He wants to have no contact with you guys, but we have your car. We're in California right now, but we will be willing to drive it out to you for a price. We will charge you $1,000 to drive it out there. And so the mother agreed, because she hears something about her son who she hasn't been in contact for a few months. She's wants to see who these people are, so she agrees to meet with them in Daytona Beach at a racetrack.
I wonder how many times, like, in that period of time that they tried to, like, contact them. Like, I wonder how many, like, had they called the cops? Like, did they think, like...
During the time, I think she wanted to file a missing persons report, and I think right after this she does, but they're like, oh, they joined this religious sect.
Yeah.
Like, because of it. And one report I read, like, she contacted the police for missing persons before. Another one said, oh, she contacted them after they met up. Sometimes when the story's not out there because it's an ongoing case, you don't hear everything correctly. So I'm trying to piece together kind of a timeline.
I think with this one too, being that it's an ongoing investigation right now, that they're not releasing a whole lot of information.
There's a lot of things they're being hush hush on.
Yeah.
Kind of there's these gaps in the timeline where you kind of don't know. It kind of jumps time because all these little pieces aren't quite filled in yet. And I'm sure some people can fill in a little bit of the pieces, but they're just not releasing it all right now because of the investigation.
Right.
But so they contact them. They agree to meet them in Daytona Beach at a racetrack, only at night. There's these conditions. And she's contacted by this woman that goes by the name of Sister Susan. So they show up at the racetrack, and she sees the car, they agree, and she says it's this woman with two other women. Only Sister Susan is speaking. She's the only one who allows to speak. I think they even say at one point one of the other girls tries to speak, and she kind of hushes them. So she does the exchange, she gets her car, but Donna had notified the cops of this meeting. So the cops are there. They arrest Sister Susan during this time. But now that the investigators are looking into this, there's no police report of the arrest.
Yeah, that's what so what did they arrest her for?
I have no idea. Maybe that's why they let her go. They just said, like, oh,
maybe they just took her in and questioned her or something.
This is Donna's account, I notified them. They came, they arrested them.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I did read that there was no record of anything.
No record of an arrest, no police report, nothing that this even took place, no real name. So, and when she tried to file the missing persons report after this, they're like, well, those people said they don't want to be contacted. They joined this religious group. They don't want to have anything to do with their families. So what are we going to do? There's nothing for us to do. So the case went cold, right? They have no idea what's going on.
And this is in the 80s too, so I feel like things were so different back then.
The record keeping's not like it is now, But during this time, even before, on January 12th, 1981, Holly's not even a year old at this time, 2 bodies are found out on Wallaceville Road. So by the time they're doing this exchange,
Oh,
Tina
their bodies
and
had
Dean
already been found.
they had already been found. They hadn't been identified,
Right.
but their bodies had already been found. So on January 12th, 1981, a dog, it was a German Shepherd, on a piece of property, was running through the woods and came back to its owners with the decomposed arm in his mouth. So an investigation took place, and they found the two bodies of Tina and Dean. And at the time, they don't know it's them. And they speculate at this time that they were murdered, because they can tell that they were murdered 2 weeks to 2 months prior to them being found. So anywhere between that October when time got cut off.
So it was pretty quickly after.
It was
that.
pretty quickly. I'm gonna assume as soon as she didn't hear from them. But
And it said that they were buried in like pretty shallow graves. Obviously,
Yeah.
if a dog found them, but and
They
they
were
were
just kind of
and they
dead.
were right next to each other, right?
they were near each other.
Yeah.
He was bound and gagged. It looked to them that Tina was attacked first, and Dean tried to save her or tried to protect her, and he was beaten to death, and that she was strangled to death. So their bodies were found near each other. It wasn't until, so they were known as two Jane Does, John Doe, Jane Does.
Yeah,
they
they
called them the Does.
Yeah, they were called
I saw the Does of Harrison County, So-
Harrison County Jane and John Doe, I think is what
yes.
it was, yeah.
and they were buried at the Harrison County Cemetery in Harrison County, and that's in Texas, outside of Houston. It's Houston.
Is it Harrison or Harris County?
Harris County. Let's just go with Harrison. I'm just adding on the fancy flair. Harris County. Thank you. That's what you're here for, is to correct me, because, woo, I'm going to be sending you to a completely different state.
That's okay. I have to interrupt because this is the funniest shit ever. You already know that I don't do well with direction, but the whole time that we're driving, she keeps telling me that we're spending the night.
On the way back.
On the way back, we're going to spend the night in Tulsa. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to get us a hotel in Tulsa. Thinking to myself, what the fuck?
Why are we?
I'm like, okay, why are we going to Oklahoma? But okay. I mean, like, I'm not, I'm in no state to try to argue and butt heads with you, but okay. And she kept saying it for like hours on end. Tulsa. Well, how come it? And she's looking at the map and she's like, well, how come I can't find Tulsa on the map? And I'm like,
no, I know where Tulsa is.
I'm like, Tucson.
Yeah.
But you were looking at something on the map and you kept saying like, it's not here. And I'm like, because we're not in Oklahoma. Like,
No,
she meant Tucson.
Tucson. Yeah, I kept saying Tucson. Well, I know Tulsa's over there, but I always say Tucson. I was always saying Tulsa for Tucson, and I don't know why. But it was just so... I don't know why I kept flipping those two. I'm like, because I know where Tulsa is.
Yeah,
But
I
I'm
think
like,
you were
'cause I'm
born
from
in Oklahoma.
I'm like, yeah, but I have never visited Tulsa, but I know it's north of Oklahoma City.
Maybe
I
that's
do
why
know
you
that
kept
much.
saying
But
Tulsa.
I don't know.
So we
But
just
Tucson.
thought like at some point maybe you need to visit there.
I do need to go to Tulsa
Yeah.
one day and visit. But we were, I always mess up names. But Harris County. So they're buried at Harris County Cemetery. So it's not until 2011 that a grant, and I was thinking, because when they said a grant, is it the same grant that they used? What was the grant used for? There's a grant that they're using to exhume bodies and to extract DNA.
We did another story and I can't remember.
Is it from Texas?
I don't remember because as soon as I read that, I thought, oh, I wonder if there's different grants like that in different states that pay for bodies to be exhumed or for cold cases to be opened.
Or is it a federal grant that all these states
That they're
were
all covered.
awarded?
Yeah, because I
know.
don't remember, I can't recall off the top of my head, but I know that we did cover another story that is actually how they solved the case was because of a grant that was offered, and that's
they
why they
exhumed the body.
they reopened a lot of cold
I
cases.
was hoping that your memory was better than mine, because I was hoping you'd be like,
Yeah.
that was so-and-so's case. And
Yeah,
then
I
you know
don't
what
remember
state.
which one it was, but I do remember one that we covered.
So, so there was a grant, so they exhumed the body and they got the DNA evidence from it, but at the time they didn't have the genetic genealogy that they have in nowadays for them to compare DNA samples. So I guess they foresaw, the need
Yeah.
for it. So they did that, and it wasn't until 2021 when they hired a genetic genealogist to go through family trees and match it with a distant relative in Kentucky with the last name of Clouse. And then as they started getting closer, they ended up contacting Dean's sister, Debbie.
The bodies were exhumed in 2021, right?
The bodies were exhumed in 2011. They were exhumed in 2011 for the DNA, but they weren't identified until 2021.
Got it.
Yeah, and they got a hold of Dean's sister, Debbie Brooks, and they gave her a call and said, hey, do you happen to have a relative who went missing about 40 years ago? And she said, yeah, my brother. And as they were asking her questions, she's like, hey, did you find his wife? She went missing too. And that's when they put the two and two together, that Tina was the person, and of course they did some testing too. There was two genealogists working. One worked on Dean's family tree and another one was working on Tina's. And that's kind of what gave them the clue that it might be Tina. And then after that, she said, where's the baby? Did you find the baby? And at first they thought that maybe they didn't, they overlooked it. Maybe because the baby was so small. They missed the baby's bones, something happened. But they were like, where's their daughter, Holly Marie? And they had no clue what they were talking about. They had no clue there was a baby missing. And so they went to missing children's that, I don't know, baby does. I don't know what they're called. They went looking for, maybe babies that were unidentified and to see if somebody matched Holly Marie around that time, and they couldn't find anything. So then at that point it was like, where's this little baby Holly Marie? What happened to her? So going back to that, they did end up finding through genealogy, they end up a few months later finding that Holly Marie is alive. She has 5 children. She has a couple grandchildren. She lives in Oklahoma, full circle.
Yeah.
She's back in Oklahoma.
Right.
Which is kind of surprising because the little story of Holly Marie and what happened to her is that in Arizona, that religious sect is going through. So it kind of makes you wonder, because there is a little bit of history with Dean, and I don't want to say cults because I don't know. I guess cults is the best way you can describe them. But he kind of dabbled his toes in it. He was really curious as a teenager. He kind of associated with them. So when this cult came to him and said, hey, they joined, the family wasn't too surprised. They were hoping that they did join and that they were living a happy life these last 40 years. And it was their choice not to contact them.
Yeah.
That was their hope, But it turns out the same description of the women that met them in Daytona Beach is the same description a church in Arizona gives of the day that they dropped off little Holly Marie at the church. So they came, the baby was delivered there. They let them know that the parents were joined this religious group and they no longer wanted the child, and they were dropping off the child. This is where it gets a little, where we don't have the information filled in. And I'm sure some people can kind of fill in a little bit, maybe whoever picked up the child, the parents who adopted Holly, but because they're not speaking and they don't want to be identified. And I just want to make it clear, the adopted parents have already been cleared. They said that
that they're not suspects.
They're not suspects, in this case, that they simply adopted Holly through the church. The baby was dropped off at the church and they adopted her. And she states that she lived a very happy, a good childhood, and that's all that Dean and Tina's family were hoping for her. But since then, they talked on Zoom, they've met in real life. In November of 2022, they had a face-to-face reunion with Dean's mother, Donna, and they were able to meet. And as you can see with the pictures we're going to show, she looks just like her mom.
Oh, exactly.
Oh my goodness, no denying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she looks like her mom exactly.
Yeah.
And that she doesn't remember any traumatic events of her childhood during that time. And of course, I mean, you're only 1 year old.
Yeah.
She was only 1 year old at the time, so of course not. But it's just, it's a really sad story that's still, I mean, hopefully they find out.
It's crazy. And like, and I guess there's probably a lot out there too. And maybe now that we're just like really deep diving into them, but it's crazy how with so many of these stories that happened back, you know, in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, that it's taken this many years for it to come full circle. And now all of a sudden all these things, and maybe it's from these grants that are coming up too, where they're able to have the money to, you know, to exhume bodies and
Get the
have
DNA.
detectives, you know, work on these cold cases. But at the same time, it's just so crazy that all these years pass and these families have absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
They just have to go on with their life just thinking that these people are gone.
Or, you know, they were just hoping that they were part of this group. But at the time, in 1981, that they were found, their body were actually pretty well preserved, because it gets really cold there. And their facial recognition was still there. Like, they can...
Yeah, because they
can
actually
identify
did like drawings and sketches of what they would look like, and they were pretty spot on.
Yeah, I mean, because they said they had enough to work with, because their faces weren't decayed. You know, they can see what they look like. So they did these sketches. But because, and they put them out there in Harris County, these photos, but because one, they lived, you know, 3-4 hours away.
Right.
In Dallas, they weren't even from the area.
Right.
And two, they had recently just moved to Texas, so not too many people knew them. So even if you threw it on the news over there, not too many people knew who they were.
They wouldn't be recognized.
So they weren't recognized. And so all these years, you know, the parents are hoping they're still alive. Yeah. They're trying to get these photos out. They couldn't identify them. And then it just goes into a cold case, and that's just
where it stays.
Where it stays. But I just want to give out some information just in case, you know, just in case somebody out there listening knows something, you know, because they are asking, since it is an open case, because a lot of the cases that we follow, we usually, you know, somebody's already on death row for it. We already know who the murderer is, serial killer cases. But since this one's still open, I'd like to give you a number that you can call. It is with Sergeant Rachel Kading at the Texas office of the Attorney General's Cold Case and Missing Persons Unit. Their number is 512-936-0742. Or at the Cold Case Unit at oag.texas.gov. And I'll have that up on the YouTube page where you can get a hold of them. But if there's anybody, you know, out there that might know something, you know, or have some kind of information. This religious sect was known to travel in the 80s through California, Arizona, and parts of Texas. They also were spotted for a while in Yuma, Arizona, begging for food. The women would be out begging for food. So if anybody has any information on maybe these people, I know that they also, in some articles, they talked about one gentleman who may possibly be connected to it. He was known as their, I don't want to say as far as a messiah, is it?
I mean,
the group?
Yeah, maybe.
That
the leader
of the group? Yeah. That traveled with them. And so I know that they were looking at him. So who knows where they're at with this case. And why we haven't heard much about it.
It'll be interesting to see where this goes and what they actually have, because I was just talking to Shannon too earlier about you know, I'm sure everybody is familiar with the Idaho case that's going on right now in real time, but it's crazy how much stuff that they actually had under their hat that they did not release, and they knew exactly what they were doing this whole time. And you know, there's always, sometimes you just have to let, and as hard as it is to not sit at home and be an armchair detective, like sometimes you have to let the detectives do what they're there to do.
Yeah.
And
we can make 1,000 speculations on this one. Like,
Yeah.
we can try to guess. We can try to assume. Oh, family's involved. Oh, this, that. This guy definitely. I don't even know. They haven't even released the name of this group, and I'm curious to know. Do they even know it? They probably do.
They probably
I mean,
do. Like, there's probably so much
Like-
that they have that, they just don't want to put out there, because now in the days of social media, people just take it and run with it, and they write their own stories, and it's
they write it as fact.
yeah, and it's
So.
it's so sad for the the members of these families that are still alive and still going through this, that they have to deal with all of this stuff. And I think it's just best sometimes to let the detectives do what they're there to do. And
But I was really surprised in reading about how many cases are out there as far as missing people in homicides across the United States.
oh yeah,
And right now, there's approximately 270,000 murder cases, and that includes 20,000 in Texas
unsolved.
that are unsolved. The Washington Post reported in 2018 that out of nearly 55,000 homicides committed across the country in a decade, only half resulted in an arrest.
Wow,
That's how many homicides
happened. Yeah,
that people are getting away with.
Mhm.
Not even that happen.
Yeah.
That people are getting away with.
I mean, there's only so many people that they have, like, that work on this kind of stuff, and that's, you see, like, how hard and how many out, like, these people work day in and day out on one case, on one single case.
Yeah.
They just, like, they go for days at a time without sleeping, without eating, and could you imagine, like, everything that comes through their door? And I get it, like, as a, on the other hand, if this was a member of your family, of course you're gonna be, get to my case, why aren't you doing this, why aren't you doing that? And it's got to be hard from both sides of it. But I think sometimes there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes that nobody even knows about.
Oh, they want
Yeah.
want it to be so secure, so set, so that
Mhm.
when it goes to trial, these people are convicted and you have the right person.
Yeah.
Because I don't want them to be fast either, because I want the right person.
Mhm.
It's not going to do me any good if I have justice for someone
Yeah.
and it's not the right
That's
person
not the right
behind the
person.
bars.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense either. Even though you want somebody so bad to pay for the crime, you want the right person to pay for that crime.
Yeah.
So
For
it's just, and once you get them there, you want enough evidence so that when you are there, because there's no double jeopardy. We can't,
Yeah, you can't redo it.
retry them,
Yeah.
so we can't retry them for the same crime. So we want to get it right the first time. We
Yeah.
don't want them to get off on not guilty, a verdict,
Mhm.
because we didn't have all the evidence.
All the evidence, you're
and all-
rushing.
Yeah, secured and tied up in a sweet little bowl. So,
Yeah.
but that was our trip to Texas. So
Yeah.
I mean, and we're gonna have more stories to tell.
Yeah, we have a ton more stories to come.
for that. So for our trip,
This was just one of the smaller cases that we wanted to touch on. There was, since there wasn't a lot of information out there on it, but we were able to visit the site, where the bodies were found. And so we just wanted to do, just a little story on it to put it out there, since it is something recent, and I'm sure the
Still
majority of
ongoing.
people are, pretty familiar with it. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast, and we hope that you subscribe and like
yeah,
and
rate us.
Rate us, please. Please leave your comments too. We actually really enjoy them.
We do.
So
Yeah.
please leave comments, and you can follow us on our podcast and on TikTok,
And Instagram. Everything's at 50 States of Madness. Thank you to our Patreons. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, it's at 50 States of Madness.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.